Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking a few minutes with me today. If you're a certified peer specialist, some sort of behavioral health provider, or an executive in a behavioral health practice or treatment program, this message is for you, and it's a really important one because today I want to introduce a term that is rapidly becoming one of the most important concepts in the future of our type of care delivery, and that term is AI integrated behavioral health care. I'm also going to introduce you to a nationally scalable platform that is already operating in this model today. And that platform is the Orbiit recovery ecosystem, but it doesn't have to be used exclusively for substance use disorder recovery. That's the key part. So the conversation is especially important for anyone working in addiction recovery because that's available immediately. But what we're discussing today is not limited to addiction at all. AI integrated behavioral health care applies to nearly every behavioral health condition where daily engagement and continuity of care can determine success or failure. That's pretty much all of them. So whether your work involves substance use disorders, anxiety, depression, trauma, relapse prevention, court compliance, transitional care, this is something you need to understand. And, a lot of us are multidisciplinary or multiple model type of folks. And in that case, this is huge because it allows a single interface for you to have high impact across your entire client base. AI integrated behavioral health care. So why do it? What is the problem with behavioral health care? Why would I do this? Well, let's start with a simple truth. Behavioral health doesn't happen inside a clinical appointment. It doesn't happen only during therapy sessions. It does not happen only during a group meeting. Behavioral health happens in real life. This is what we're trying to grapple with or help our people learn to manage better. It happens in the hours after work. It happens in the morning when someone wakes up with anxiety or depression. It happens late at night when someone is alone and their thoughts start to spiral. It happens with those clouds of anxiety. We all have heard that before. It happens in moments of stress, conflict, isolation, boredom, grief, all these times. It happens a lot of times other than during the appointment, which is all the other hours of the week. AI integrated behavioral health is so helpful here. The behavioral health system we've relied on for decades is built around those appointments. It's built around scheduled sessions and inpatient episodes, that revolving door for some folks. There's discharge planning, but it's kind of fragmented and periodic follow-up. That model's helped millions of people for sure, but it also leaves a gap that every professional in this field understands. It leaves the space in between appointments almost completely unprotected. That gap is where relapse happens, and that gap is where treatment dropouts occur. That gap is where motivation collapses. That gap is where the mind starts convincing the person that their better health, their better mental health can wait till another day. And this is not a small problem. That gap is the majority of a person's life. It's every other time. A person may see a therapist once a week or attend a program twice a week, but behavioral health is lived every single day. So the question becomes very clear. How do we build a system that keeps recovery from my condition active and measurable in between appointments? How do we keep our clients engaged when their life is actually happening? That is what AI integrated behavioral healthcare actually does. That's the cool part. This is the extraordinary way AI machine learning can make a difference. This is where AI integrated behavioral healthcare becomes a game changer. Because that AIBH is not about replacing therapists. It's not about replacing peer specialists. It's not about replacing addiction counselors, physicians, case managers, or clinical directors, or any of those things. AI integrated behavioral health is about filling the gap in between appointments, amplifying your effect, reinforcing those great ideas. AI integrated behavioral health care is a structured model of care that integrates artificial intelligence and machine learning into the daily support environment of a patient, providing continuous, nonstop, 24/7 engagement, behavioral health care reinforcements, and measurable accountability, like true objective data points. And that's really vital too. It can increase your billing. It can increase your effectiveness in session. Think about this. How many of us are left with, so how'd your week go? How are you feeling today? And our client can't remember for their life that just yesterday they were panicking. They're like, I'm okay, and just ate a Big Mac at McDonald's. I'm good. It's just that we capture a 1 hour moment and not a glimpse of their life. And with things like the Orbit recovery ecosystem, and it can just as well be a depression ecosystem, anxiety, an ADHD ecosystem, even like a bipolar ecosystem. It could be a lot of different things. It's agnostic to what you want to address. It's something that's with them all of the time, and it produces data for the practitioner that is actionable. Like literally, you were stressed out Tuesday. What was going on then? That type of stuff. Your engagement dropped. I see you haven't been interacting with the AI. What's going on? And it can be your model. It can be ACT, DBT, CBT, IFS, any of it. So it's, the professional care provider remains the person delivering the treatment, and the AI system becomes that continuity layer that keeps the patient engaged, directed, and supported every day. In other words, AI integrated behavioral healthcare is not therapy. It's not the therapy itself. It's continuity. It's not a clinical replacement. It's the clinical amplification. Boom, it is the missing infrastructure layer that behavioral health has lacked for decades. And it creates a new standard of care where engagement is continuous rather than episodic. Continuous rather than episodic. All the time, everywhere, all days, no matter what. Yeah, when did we have that? We didn't know we needed it. It's like finding that tool that does an amazing job that we never thought about until we tried it, and then all of a sudden it works. It's a catapulting into a different dimension in a lot of ways. So when we talk about like the recovery ecosystem model, that environment, creating the environment of recovery from SUD is the critical thing. The recovery ecosystem model is all day, every day. Now, one of the most powerful ways to understand the AIBH is through the recovery model for sure. And the reason why is recovery has such catastrophic problems when people relapse, the violation of trust, the hurt souls all around that person, all those dreams that they're going to get better just sort of vanish, and it feels like a really personal insult. I know we want to end the stigma around it, but what a challenge that would be. The recovery ecosystem model isn't like a single service either. It's not one meeting. It's not one appointment. It's not one peer specialist or anything like that. It's an ecosystem. It's an environment. It is a network of structure, accountability, relationships, direction, and daily reinforcement. And why that's important, and the way I like to describe it is actually this, that the recovery ecosystem model is a little bit like potted plants. Potted plants are what we currently have. Everybody is separated. It's like a counselor is one plant, and the treatment program and the IOP and the meetings and the family's another plant, the employer's another plant. They're all just, and all of them require a great deal of work. Like this person that's brand new to recovery that had zero sense of responsibility, perhaps, or at least maybe a sense of it, but an inability to meet those responsibilities due to their condition, is suddenly thought to be highly responsible and handed the keys to deal with all of it, manage it all, handle your own case management, dude. And consequently, they fail a lot. This is difficult because they don't know how to take care of all those plants. They don't know which ones need sunlight, which of those potted plants need fertilizer, how often to water them, or any of that. And that's the fragmented system. But in the contrast to that, because even though this person still stays at the center in the recovery ecosystem, like any plant ecosystem, you take them out of the pots and you put them into the ground. Nobody's got to do anything if they're in the right place. Nobody's got to think about how to fertilize them. Nobody's got to think about these things. It's just the natural way that it happens. And the plant can then operate, meaning the person in recovery can then operate based on their own specific needs. And this is such a huge advancement. So the recovery ecosystem model is a good example for that reason, because they need a lot. And when a person is inside inpatient care, they're surrounded by an ecosystem, even though it's like an artificial environment. Their schedule is structured, their behavior is guided, their day is supported. But when they discharge, the ecosystem kind of completely collapses. The structure disappears, the reminders disappear. The person is suddenly left to rebuild the recovery environment on their own in a lot of cases. It's like the insurance is done, and so are we, often while facing the same triggers and stressors that originally contributed to their addiction or mental health decline in the first place. So an example of that is the Orbiit recovery ecosystem, because it was built specifically to solve that problem. Orbiit is a product that operates as an AIBH by creating a continuous recovery environment outside of the facility and between clinical appointments. Orbiit is so important because it delivers daily engagement through structured microlearning, check-ins, and adaptive reminders, which are generated by AI as they personally get to know the individual. It's a highly, highly personalized. And as a professional caregiver or an organization, you can customize this. It can be your model. It can be your material. It can be your book. It can be your package. It could be your method. It's indifferent to that, but it can help them build it. You can even target a behavior and dial the intensity up on how the AI goes after that particular behavioral change. Ever heard that before? Probably not. So this is really powerful stuff, and it's vital that it be safe and secure and driven by licensed and certified professionals, because these real-time adjustments really happen based on their behavior, and it's highly personalized. That's what a true recovery ecosystem looks like in a modern digital form. It's not a static app that just has one set of information. It's not a content library. It is a living engagement system designed to keep recovery active every day when no appointment is scheduled. All the time in between. It fills the gap. One of the best places that a AIBH works is with peer specialists, because in the recovery model, they're like a key driver of the AI integrated care. And we can talk about why this matters specifically for CPS-AD providers and certified peer specialists, because they're one of the most important forces in behavioral health. Peer specialists bring credibility through lived experience and real-world understanding that really can't be duplicated any other way. It's not to say that if you haven't lived it, you don't understand. I'm not a buyer of that. I'm not a buyer of that at all. We've all had trouble in our life. There's some sort of relationship with us all. We've all, in some way, recovered from something, some sort of tragedy, some sort of difficulty, some sort of event that was traumatic. Just about everybody has had experiences with that. So it's not a lack of understanding, which is so you can't know what. That's just not the case at all. But what you can know is that the exact circumstances, of course, are different. But it's the consequences of those circumstances that's the same, right? So peer specialists, because of that, speak the same language of recovery in a way that feels real to the participants. And peer specialists can identify relapse thinking before it comes relapse behavior. And also does the recovery ecosystem. And that valuable connection, the collaboration and corroboration of the objective data from the ecosystem, from the AI, develops a relationship to the individual participant. And if they start to drift towards relapse, often before they even know it, it can notify the CPS-AD or professional care provider that, hey, we're seeing this drift. Yeah, lack of engagement, drift. How many times have you heard a relapse? Well, what happened? Well, I stopped going to meetings. I stopped doing this, or I stopped doing this other habit, whatever it was they were doing. But it starts with a disengagement, always, 100% of the time. So when we start talking about peer specialists, they can help them take that next right step. They know what to say. And this is why the AIBH, the recovery ecosystem, which is in behavioral health integrated AI, is so important. Peer specialists haven't been underpowered for a long time. They're often expensive, large caseloads, things like that. They're in ERs and places like that. And they deal with manual check-in systems, text messaging, documentation systems. And as demand has increased dramatically, they're expected to do more, but the infrastructure we're currently using, which is, basic communications, won't support it. So an AIBH is vital to them, and it gives them a continuity platform of recovery that really integrates them into the care of the person in a deeper way, a much more efficient way, through objective data that can be corroborated by their subjective trained opinion. It's so, so important. So instead of the peer specialist trying to create that entire recovery environment manually, the ecosystem provides the daily structure automatically. It provides engagement prompts. It provides micro-learning reinforcement. It provides measurable participation tracking, and it provides early indications when someone is disengaging or drifting towards relapse. It's so important because this allows the peer specialist to focus on what matters most: human relationship, mentorship, accountability, encouragement, and real conversation. AI does not replace the peer specialist. AI elevates the peer specialist into a higher level of effectiveness and professionalism. Connection. It strengthens the peer role and allows peer specialists to manage more people without losing quality or integrity. In fact, it will increase those things. It's really, really powerful. It'll dramatically increase those things because you're getting all day, every day data. I mean, here's a question for you. Have you ever lied to your telephone? Did it matter to your telephone? No, of course it didn't. Have you ever, instead of calling a human being, gone to your phone to solve a problem? Like find a video on YouTube, look through Google to find things. Of course you have. We all do that. Is it reasonable to think that when someone's doing that, we can discover things about their mental health status and their recovery status from the telephone, from the device that maybe they can't remember or is operating in a less than conscious mind? If we can just get that data and condense it down into something practical and applicable, like what we call the sober score, wouldn't that be really vital to care? Of course it would. Of course it would. But instead, a lot of people do those same things and they go to things like the basic LLM models. And there's a risky side to that. And I want to talk about that for sure. The risk side is, really why simple LLM chats can be dangerous. They're not trying to be therapists. And now with all these advantages, we also have to talk about the risk AI integrated behavioral healthcare has with it, and because it's powerful and it's got to be implemented responsibly. Right now, millions of people are using large language model chat tools like ChatGPT and asking about mental health problems. People are using conversational AI systems for anxiety and depression and trauma, addiction cravings, relapse triggers, and even suicidal ideation, which is kind of scary. Many people are self-diagnosing through AI conversations before they ever sit down with professional care. The AI has become, in some ways, the initial contact. The problem is that these simple LLM chat tools are not behavioral health care. They're not even meant trying to be. They're not structured for clinical integrity. They're not designed for crisis escalation. They may produce hallucinations and inaccurate guidance or false reassurance. They may reinforce distorted thinking, and they may fail to recognize high-risk disclosures. In addiction recovery, this is especially dangerous because relapse often begins in subtle thinking patterns that need structured intervention, not a casual conversation. No, not that at all, but really direct, hard-hitting intervention. There's also the major issue of security. Behavioral health conversation think about it. They contain some of the most personal information in existence: traumatic histories, addiction disclosures, medication use, legal status, family conflicts, relapse admissions, mental health instability are all a part of this particular environment. Do you want to just be talking about that to an LLM? Probably not. If that data is mishandled, if it's stored improperly or exposed through a security failure, the consequences could be severe because you can't ever put it back in. So the question is not whether AI can be used in behavioral health. The question is whether it is being used safely, securely, with accountable standards. This is where we formed an organization to govern that. We realized what we were doing was powerful, and we formed the Substance Use Disorder Foundation standards and a certification that is really a mandatory thing for trust. I mean, that's why we created the Substance Use Disorder Foundation. It's why it exists. It's an association of substance use disorder treatment apps and software developers working to establish standards for safety, privacy, security, and digital behavioral health. SUDF for short recognizes that AI for behavioral health is expanding rapidly and is setting certification accreditation requirements to ensure that AI integrated behavioral health platforms operate with the highest level of integrity. The behavioral health industry cannot afford, it just cannot go down this road without this level of scrutiny and treat it as a casual consumer technology. The SUDF standards focus on proactive security, a really key ingredient, privacy protection, and governance systems that reduce liability exposure and protect patients. In the future, certification accreditation will become one of the most important differentiators in the AI integrated BH space. The marketplace needs to be flooded with people that have been evaluated. Executives and investors should understand that this market will reward trust, it will reward security, it will reward measurable accountability, and it will penalize platforms that operate without verified standards. And that could be easy as a public disclosure of a security failure. It seems like banks can do this all the time and not pay the price, but I don't think that's true with my personal health information. I think PHI distributed out there. If I go online and I find something of my own PHI, the Medical Information Bureau in Massachusetts is a place most people don't even know about, where all their PHI is really evaluated and scrutinized. What if that got loose? Could it get loose out of an LLM? You bet it could. Could it get loose out of a AI for behavioral health? Yes, it could, unless they have hit certain security levels and requirements. Like Orbiit Recovery is a certified, is SUDF certified. There's a level above that called SUDF accreditation, and that's the highest level. So it's the first nationally scalable AI integrated care platform. So the Substance Use Disorder Foundation identified the Orbiit Recovery ecosystem because we formed it. It's the same people, but we realized the implications of what we were doing were really kind of incredible. And we wanted to assure people and set a standard. So as competitors to what Orbiit is doing come onto the market, they got to operate at that same level. They got to step up and do what we're doing. They got to invest the dollars and the time and the skill to get their stuff right. And if they don't need to be in this space. They don't need to be in this space. It's really just that simple. So that's why Orbiit's one of the first nationally scalable AI BH platforms operating under the certification of SUDF. Orbiit is designed to create a recovery ecosystem environment that functions continuously, supporting participants between appointments and during the most vulnerable periods of recovery, which is when nobody else is around. One of the most critical relapse windows in the addiction treatment space is that first 180 days after discharge from sort of inpatient or an IOP. There's been a graduation, even though they're not cured, right? They've act like they've finished. There's been some sort of artificial finishing point slapped into the recovery process, but it's no finish at all. It is maybe, hopefully, perhaps a beginning point. And for some people, it's a really vital beginning point and symbolic of success in the future. And for others, they're done. They're done. Unless they can be connected to a platform like this that's going to roll with them as they wrestle in their own life with recovery. Because this is where systems historically fail. The person leaves that structured treatment and returns to their real life without consistent daily accountability. And Orbiit was built to stabilize that transition. It provides daily engagement, daily recovery reinforcement, and measurable accountability tools that support both the participant and the care team. Because remember, they all get that objective data. Orbiit is currently SUDF certified, like I said, and is advancing towards that highest level of accreditation. And I think by the fourth quarter of 2026, we'll achieve that. This positions Orbiit not only as a recovery product, but as a long-term infrastructure platform for AI integrated behavioral health. And that's my plug for Orbiit. It is the best thing, and it can be adapted to any behavioral health environment. So if your practice focuses on depression or anxiety, ADHD, bipolar disorder, just to name the top ones, or any combination, co-diagnosis, comorbid factors, we can help with that. We can design this specifically for you, and we want to. We'll do it at no cost to you currently, at no cost to you. We appreciate the input and the help and the ability to hear your specific situation and how we can help you adapt to the market. So let's talk about the future. You know,